In lesson 1, we learned a little bit about evaluating an expression. For instance, if we say that x equals 5 and we want to know what the absolute value of x is, what we would do is plug in the value of 5 where we see it in the expression and then simplify. So in this case, it would be the absolute value of 5. And then the answer to that would be 5. We're going to take it a little bit further with this evaluating, and let me give you some examples. So let's say we have x plus 3, and we're going to be given the value of x. So let's say that x is equal to 4. All we're going to do is plug in that 4, the remaining amount of that expression, and then simplify, which would be 7. What if x were a negative 2? Again, since this is our starting expression, we're going to plug in negative 2 for x. And then we'll simplify or solve it. Because we have a negative and a positive, we're really going to take the difference, and the sign will take on a positive sign. So our answer is 1. Let's say that x is equal to negative 5. Negative 5 plus 3, a negative and a positive. The difference between 5 and 3 is 2. It's going to be negative because 5 is larger than 3, so a negative 2. And lastly, let's say x is equal to negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is going to be 0. They're going to cancel each other out. Let's look at another example. Let's say that x plus a negative 2, and x is going to be a positive 4. X will also be a negative 5. So we're going to plug in that 4. You should get a positive 2. We're taking the difference, and 4 is larger, that's positive, positive 2. For this one, we have negative 5 plus negative 2. Notice that both signs are negative, so the answer is going to be a negative, and we're going to be adding these two together. So our answer is negative 7. Okay, now I also want to talk a little bit about evaluating expressions with 2 variables. Right now, with these, we only had 1. And there are some examples in the book. I'm going to go ahead and make up a couple. Let's say we have A plus B. Pretty basic one here. And A is going to equal negative 3, whereas B will equal 7. So again, we're just plugging in. So negative 3, and this is going to be plus, and B is 7. And so this should be familiar, or you're getting more familiar with it. We have a negative with a positive. That means we're taking the difference. Since 7 is larger and that's positive, we're going to have 4 as our answer. Okay, now you might have other problems like that. Let's make this a little bit harder. Let's say we have A plus 3B. Now, when you see a number next to a variable without an operation, this means multiplication. So we're going to times, so 3 times B. That's basically what that means. And let's say that A equals -2 and B equals 4. So again, we're going to plug in what we have, -2 plus 3, and you could write the times here. I prefer not to use the x because when we're working with variables, it could be a little confusing. Instead, I like to use parentheses. You could choose to use a dot, but again, I'm going to use parentheses. With order of operation, remember PEMDAS? This is multiplication. Multiplication is going to happen first before addition. So 3 times 4 is 12, and we have -2 plus 12. Again, we're going to subtract, and the answer is going to be positive, so our answer is 10. Now, the book has another type of problem with an exponent, and let's go ahead and do one of those. And it doesn't matter what letter you're using. The book uses X and Y. I'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to evaluate X plus Y, the quantity of X plus Y squared. And we're going to say that X equals -4 and Y equals 6. So before we do any adding or squaring, we're just going to plug in these values first. -4 plus 6. So the quantity of -4 plus 6 squared. So PEMDAS, if you remember, we do have parentheses and we do have exponents. So we're going to evaluate what's inside the parentheses first and then square that result. So -4 plus 6 is going to be a +2, and 2 squared, remember the exponent tells us how many times we're going to multiply that 2. 2 times 2 is going to be 4, and that's going to be your answer. There are a few examples of this type of problem in the textbook. 3.25 has the solution. I would recommend doing that one first before doing the others. Oh, there is one with the exponent of 3. Let's go ahead and do that one. And that example is 3.50. So 3.50. And it's written as x plus y cubed, meaning the exponent is 3. And it's saying that x equals -8 and y equals 10. So before I do anything, I'm going to plug in -8 plus 10 and then I've got my cubed mark there. I need to solve what's inside the parentheses first. It's a little confusing. That's going to be a positive 2, so 2 cubed. That's the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2. That's, or you could write it as 2 times 2 times 2 with the dots. That's fine. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And so that's your answer. That was a good one. Now the last section has to do with translating phrases. And let's just talk about a couple of them. I want to try to keep this short. So sum, the word sum means addition. So you're adding, okay? And if you are increasing, you're also adding. And let's see if there's any other word. Okay, so they have some translation, simplify type problems. I'm going to do 3.54 in this example. And it says the sum of -8 and -12 increased by 7. Okay, so the sum of -8 and -12 increased by 7. How we're going to write that out, we're going to look at it in parts. So this part here, and then this part here. The sum of -8 and -12, a good way to do that, since we're looking at the different parts, we've got -8 plus -12, and we could put that in parentheses or brackets, and then we're going to add to that an increase of 7. So we're setting it up first by translating what we see, and then solving. Now, if you don't put the brackets, it's not going to make a difference because you're adding. If we had different operations like multiply or divide, things might change a bit. But if you just had -8 plus -12 plus -7, you're still going to get the same result. If you do have brackets or parentheses, you're going to solve the operation within that first and then add the 7. Okay, the last thing I want to focus on briefly is some word problems. And these are application problems. I am going to give you a couple of application problems to solve. So one example is, say you check the temperature in the morning, and so in the AM, let's say it's -5 degrees Fahrenheit, and by noon, it's gone up. It's gone up 20 degrees. Okay, and so it might be asking you, what is the temperature at noon? Okay, and so you can translate that by starting with your starting temperature in the morning, -5, and you're adding 20, so it went up 20 degrees, so we're adding 20, and now we have to figure out what is that temperature at noon. Well, we're going to subtract these two, and it's going to be positive, so a positive 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would be the temperature for noon. There are other problems relating to sea level. There's a football problem as well. And again, there's some solutions you could look through. Definitely review those examples before doing some of the word problems. Okay, so I'll post this video and then you'll have the homework, and you'll be good to go.